starting. And once again, my name is Miss Michelle, and there's another librarian here too today, Miss Alex. And I'm in Palatka. We have a special guest up in Jacksonville, and she's outside right now and it's very windy. So I have her microphone turned off, but she'll be joining us too. You can see her picture up there. She's standing up outside and waving. Hi, Emily. Her name is Emily Floore, and she's an expert on the river because she's part of an organization called the St. John's Riverkeeper. So they know all about what lives on the river, the plants, the animals, and how people use the river, and how the river is affected by how people use the river. So let me see how the wind is doing there. Maybe we can have Miss Emily say hello. Oh, I hear wind. How are you, Miss Emily?
Hi, everybody. How y'all doing?
Do you want to say anything about the Riverkeeper or what you do before we start?
Sure. So my name, as Michelle already said, is Emily Floore. I'm the Education Director for St. John's Riverkeeper, meaning that I do hands-on river science programming with kindergarten through 12th graders. During the current times, we have had to adjust our programming from hands-on to more virtual, such as this. So y'all are actually our very first virtual classroom, as well as I know this is Michelle's first time as well trying this out. So my job is to teach students about the river by hands-on experiential learning. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the river a little bit, some conservation efforts that you can do, and then I have a model to kind of visualize how humans can impact the river both positively and negatively. So the St. John's Riverkeeper is a conservation advocacy group, which means we stand up for the river and make sure that it's protected from harm from people that are doing bad things to it.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to mute you because it's very gusty.
Please do.
Okay, sorry about the wind, everyone. It's just very gusty out there. And actually, right now, I'm looking at the river outside my window, and it's very windy here, too. So as we do the program, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can write them down, and we can ask afterwards, and we'll see what the answers are with our expert here. So before we actually go on the river, I'm just going to share my screen and show you some filming that I did from my kayak. And we're going to see where we are in Florida and where the river is. So just a moment. And we'll take a look at the state of Florida. All right, does everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so see that finger? There's that St. John's River. And by the way, it is the longest river in Florida. It is 310 miles long. So, and something interesting about it is it flows from south to north, flows upward, which is very unusual. So there it is. And next, let's zoom in. Just a second. All right, I put all the library branches so you could see where your branch is compared to where the river is. And let's start in the north. So here's Ponte Vedra by the ocean, Bartram Trail, very close to the river, Maine, Anastasia Island, Southeast, and Hastings. That's where I work. And now let's look at where we are Miss Emily and I. She's way up here in Jacksonville in the north, and I'm way down here in Palatka where it's very rural, suburban and rural. So we'll see what that looks like when we get on the river. And this is me getting into the kayak and getting going on that river. It's very peaceful up here. Not up here, down here. And there's a bird that I think is called an anhinga, but I'm not sure. So I'm gonna ask Miss Emily if she'll take a look and tell me if that's an anhinga. There's a lot of wildlife, a lot of birds on the river where I am. And it's a very wide river here. There's a big bump in it near Palatka, so it's very wide. And there are a lot of little creatures living in these little wet areas. And there's the anhinga taking off in slow motion. It's kind of hard to get close to the creatures because I make too much noise and they got scared. And here is a blue heron, and that is a wading bird. And they eat just about anything they can find. Snails, shrimp, insects. They have to be very quiet while they're stalking their prey. They use that sharp beak to get a hold of it. They're very pretty. Now I'm in my screen, I can't see your chats right now. So maybe you can save your questions if you're having any for after, because all I can see is what I'm looking at, that beautiful heron. I saw these larvae in the water. There were lots and lots of them, and I had no idea what they were. And you'll see in a minute, I had to go home and look on the computer to see what they were. They were everywhere. And that's a picture of them from a little further away. Oh, and this is a really interesting rock-looking thing that I saw. And that looks like shells. Miss Emily said maybe clam shells. And it just looked like everything was packed together. So I don't know how it got like that. And I'm going to pause for a second. This is just one way that people use the river in Palatka. I think that's a float for a crab pot, and it gets very crowded in the river during the crabbing season. Is everybody still here okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And now here I am back in one of the little quiet areas, trying to find birds. I wish I had seen a manatee, but I didn't see one that day. And I'm coming back to shore. And this is one of those midges. I think they're midges. The larvae that I saw, this is what it looks like grown up, an adult midge. And this is what it looks like when they come all over your house. They were everywhere. And here's a spider catching the midges to eat, because apparently they're very delicious to spiders. And here's, do you see what's in the bird's claw? Do you see that fish?
Yeah.
I always feel sad when I see a bird carrying away a fish or even a little animal. But then you know, birds have to eat too, so that's just part of the cycle of nature. And speaking of food, these are turkey vultures, and they found a dead fish in the water and pulled it out, and they spent the whole day and even part of the next day eating that fish. And that's what it looked like the next day. So nothing gets wasted. And this alligator is, we named him Fluffy. He is, you can't tell by this picture, but he is, I think, the biggest alligator I've ever seen. I'm really glad he wasn't there when I was in my kayak. Now, here's a little bit more about how the river is used. This is at the public dock in Palatka. And this looks like some sort of little barge. It might have been bringing pilings for a dock or something that they were building. So, but a lot of people where I live use the river for fun. So they might sail, or there's a little motorboat right there. And the bass fishing tournament is here. So ESPN comes, and a lot of big tournaments on the weekends in Palatka. And here is something that happens, unfortunately, too, is I find a lot of trash. And usually it's not, doesn't seem to be from people using the river. It's a lot of times it is just stuff that people throw out their car window as they're driving by. So that's too bad. And here's something that's going on in my neighborhood right now. And do you see how it says drains to waterways, dump no waste? That's because anything that goes into the sewers here goes directly to the river. So it's good to not to put any garbage or anything down there. And this is just an oil spot on the sidewalk, because what happens when it rains is anything that's on the surface, like the oil or whatever these guys are doing to make the roads, that can end up in the river because it'll flow right down the sewers and get into the river. So it's very important not to put, chemicals or anything down the sewer, but it does affect the river. And next you'll see this is a sewer, a culvert that leads straight to the river. So that would bring anything from the sewer into the river. And this was something I was going to ask Miss Emily about. I often see foam like this on the shore or near the docks, and I'm not sure if it's natural or man-made or comes from off somebody's boat. And does anybody know what kind of birds these are?
No.
No, they're called sandhill cranes. And actually they've been outside, they're not there right now, but they've been outside this morning, and they spend a lot of time on the shore eating bugs and little things in the grass, and they mate for life. So this is a pair that are always together, unless I think sometimes there's one if the mother is sitting on the eggs in the nest. They're very pretty, and when they get worried or distressed, they jump and they look like little dancers and they make beautiful sounds. Okay, so that's my part of the river down in rural Palatka. Now I'm going to shrink my screen and we'll go to Miss Emily.
Am I on?
Not yet, hold on one moment. I have to stop screen share.
I unmuted it, Michelle.
Okay, can you see Miss Emily, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. You can start, Miss Emily. I'm trying to figure out how, oh, there we go.
There, okay, awesome.
All right.
So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you guys, I have Miss Catherine with me on the other side of the camera. She is going to show you guys what the river looks like here in Jacksonville, just for comparison. As Miss Michelle said, our river is 310 miles long, and it moves from south to north. So that has to do with the gradient or the elevation of the state of Florida. So how we use our river in Jacksonville is really different on how you're going to see it anywhere else in the river. And the reason for that is because we are so close to the ocean that we get these huge tankers that come in, and what they're bringing are goods from all over the world. So here in Jacksonville, we have several what's called ports, and that's what these big shipping containers are bringing in. So you'll see a big black ship that says Crowley. Y'all may have seen those, that name on the side of like 18-wheelers on their containers. We have a tugboat with pushing a barge. There's actually a boat that is carrying cars, and so they're unloading the cars here. But you'll see those blue cranes. They look like, I always thought they looked like dinosaurs. And what they do is they remove there's actually one actively removing it. I don't know if the tree is in the way, but it's just to the left of that palm tree. And you can see them lifting those shipping containers off of the boat. And so they're gonna go onto the back of those 18-wheelers, and then they're gonna travel across the Southeast delivering goods like your televisions that come from other countries, or your shoes, or your clothes. Anytime you see something that says made in China, or made in Vietnam, or made in Germany, this is how they get here. So our view of the river here in Jacksonville is very industrial, whereas you guys have it very recreational down in Palatka. And so because we are so close to the ocean, the kind of water we have up here is a type of water called brackish water, which is a mixture of salt and fresh. So this is where the fresh water from the southern part of our river meets with the incoming tides of the ocean, and they mix together. So that gives us a great deal of different animals than what you guys will see in Palatka. So we see a lot of the same creatures that Michelle saw on the river. We see great blue herons. We do get manatees up here whenever they migrate north, when it's getting a little warmer. We do see the anhingas and the cormorants that you saw. The difference that you can tell in them is the shape of their beak. So one has more of a hooked bill, whereas the other one's more of a straight bill. I have a hard time telling the difference visually because the beaks are so small. So, but we do get different animals than what you guys get. We get dolphins up here. They come in with the tide, they're following their prey. And so we get a lot of dolphin families in our river. And so there's just, because of the kind of water that we have, we get different species of animals and plants in our section of the river. So that's how it looks here. Now I'm at Jacksonville University, which is where the Riverkeeper's offices are located. We are a nonprofit on a college campus. We're not associated with the college, but we do have a great partnership with the college here. So we have access to, let me put the windbreaker on. Yeah, sure. We do have a great partnership, so we have access to scientists. We do use science in all of our advocacy issues that we try to ensure that the river is taken care of. So we can just walk down the hall and ask one of the professors here, one of the scientists here, their expert opinions. So that way we have a wealth of knowledge to combat these issues. So that's what our river looks like here in downtown Jacksonville. And then as we move towards you guys, it really transforms into that more natural look where you can.
Oh, we just lost audio.
All that kind of stuff. Does anybody have any questions about the area of the St. Johns River here in Jacksonville?
I'm trying, oh, did you draw a picture? Is that a fish? I'm trying to unmute. Let's see.
The fishy.
Oh, there we go. It's a fish. Nice. So do you have any questions, anybody, about the river or what lives in the river or how it's used? I forgot to say something about monkeys, because believe it or not, my neighbors have seen monkeys around here because, and I've heard they're not native to Florida. They were brought here. I've heard two things. One thing I heard was they were brought here to film the movie Tarzan back in the 1930s. I also heard that there was somebody who was doing river tours on a boat, and he thought it would be fun and exotic to see monkeys. So I heard that he brought them here, but they're actually running around. Monkeys are running around.
If you see those monkeys, don't approach them and don't touch them.
In fact, you shouldn't feed or interfere with any of the animals, right, Miss Emily?
Correct. Yeah. So a lot of people think that they are doing wild animals, a good favor by giving them food, but really that's harming their ability to find food on their own. And if they become so reliant on humans feeding them and say that human leaves, then you've now caused them to not be able to hunt on their own, and they can't fend for themselves. So you should never feed a wild animal, especially from your hand, because they're going to get used to humans feeding them. And so that's when you start hearing scary stories of alligators approaching humans because they're so used to being fed. And unfortunately, that means that those alligators then need to be removed from their habitat because they become dangerous. They can harm your property. They can harm humans. They can. If you have a dog, sometimes you hear about dogs going missing. So if you don't feed an alligator, and if you do have what's called a nuisance alligator, which the Florida Department of Wildlife Commission says is over 4 feet and is a potential danger for your property and your family, they will come and remove it. And they actually have to remove it. They have to relocate it several miles away from where it was captured, because alligators have great homing beacons because that's their home, and so they can actually return to the area that they were captured even if they were relocated 10 miles away. So you have to really relocate those animals, and that's not good for them. So don't ever feed a wild animal because it does them more damage than it does good.
Okay. Did anybody think of any other questions?
You're doing this, we're going to move to our model. So if you just want to unvideo us and mute us so that way there isn't a crazy movement, we're going to go ahead and relocate.
So Michelle, can we actually leave the meeting and then join back up so that the battery of the phone isn't running down the whole time?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and leave the meeting then, and then I'll go back into the link when we're ready. How about that?
Okay. We'll see you soon.
All right. See you soon.
Oh, hi, Miss Emily.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. Sorry for the delay. We had to move inside because of the wind and the glare. So we had to do a quick change.
Right. You don't want your model to blow away.
No, actually inside one of the lab classrooms here at Jacksonville University. So as I mentioned, Riverkeeper's offices are located on a college campus in what's called the Marine Science Research Institute. So in this building houses worldly known scientists that study plankton, sharks, the algae that grow in the river. We have one professor that studies the hydrology of the river, which is how water moves and how the way that the bottom of the river changes, how that changes the velocity of the river. So we're in one of the lab classrooms that they teach in. So it's pretty cool to be able to have this kind of facility at our fingertips, along with the local experts. So this provides a pretty cool platform, also not just standing outside and along the river, which is of course gorgeous. But what I have for y'all today, I just wanted to show you quickly how one of our educational programs that we take into the classroom to show how human impacts can negatively harm our river and eventually our ocean. So can everybody see the model that's in front of me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So what are some things that you see on this model right now? Just go ahead and say it out loud. I can't see your faces, so if you're raising your hand, just go ahead and say it out loud.
The house.
Yeah, so we have homes on our model. So this model is what's called a watershed model. And so models are smaller versions of a bigger idea. So I can't bring all 310 miles of a river into this classroom. So what I've done is I've shrunk it down into a smaller version to show you. So we have some houses, aren't there? You guys live along the St. John's River, right? You may not live right next to it, but it's near you. So there's some houses in our watershed. What else can you see?
A car.
Yeah, so there's cars. Y'all have to go places like the grocery store. Y'all were going to school somehow. So also with a model, you also have to simplify it. So with all that's about 4 million people. I can't put 4 million cars on my little model. So my 2 cars are going to represent all the cars within the St. John's River watershed. What else can you see?
A tractor.
Yeah, so a tractor. So where does a tractor belong? Where does it belong?
At a farm.
On a farm. So we have our farm here. Do you guys have farms in the Palatka area?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what do we get from farms?
Food.
Food.
For example, wheat.
A lot of the answers we get our food from the stores. Stores have to get their food. We have our cows, we have our pigs, we have a farmhouse, so we have people taking care of our farm animals. There are also maybe crops that they're taking care of. So we have our farm. What else can you see?
Houses.
Say that again. Houses. Yep, we got our houses here.
Houses.
Yeah, we got our houses. We have people that live in our watershed. We have people that raise food in our watershed. We have people that drive. Do you guys see these things? What are these things?
Oh, trees?
Really tall and green.
A tree.
Trees. Yeah, there are trees. Do you guys have trees outside your house right now?
Yeah, we have 2 in our yard.
We have trees in our watershed. What do trees give us?
Air.
They give us oxygen to breathe. Good job. They
Air.
dioxide.
Fresh air.
Yeah, and then they give us the oxygen. We also have our places of business. So again, on the model, there's a lot of places of business: grocery stores, banks, hair cuttery places. So we're just going to represent all of our businesses with just one building, but that's my place of business. Some other things we have is we have a construction site. Your county neighbors of St. John's County are doing a lot of construction. Clay County, just north of you guys, are doing a lot of construction because people are moving to Florida. And so we have a construction site here. Anybody have a dog?
Yes.
Yeah. Anybody have a cat?
Right there.
I have 2 cats.
We have dogs.
Yeah, you have dogs. Anybody have a fish? Or a gerbil?
Dog.
All of our domestic animals, all of our pets, be represented by my dog. And yes, it is bigger than the houses, so I call this dog Clifford because he's bigger than the houses. And then the other things we have bridges to get over our waterways, so you can see our waterways here. And where does our St. John's River empty out into? Where is the end point of our river? Anybody know? What's the
south.
body of water off our coast?
What did you say?
What's the what body of water does our river flow out into?
The ocean.
Ocean, good. So this is our Atlantic Ocean right here. And between the river and the ocean, we have things called an estuary. So in an estuary, which is where the river and the ocean meet, is we have some oysters, and we have what's called wetlands. And so my wetlands are represented by a sponge because they soak up extra water just like a sponge does. And just like a sponge, it cleans the water. So it's cleaning water for us. So that's our model. Now, when y'all go outside, does it look this nice and pretty? Or are there things missing that you see maybe on the side of the road?
Garbage,
Yeah.
trash.
So we're going to show negative human impacts by using sprinkles. Okay? Because I don't want to handle nasty trash to put on here. So I'm going to use my rainbow sprinkles to show garbage, litter that you see on the sides of the road. So they're different colors so they can represent different things. Maybe the white sprinkles represent styrofoam. Maybe the yellow ones represent, I don't know, McDonald's bags. I don't know, anything you want it to be. So you guys see them along the sides of the road, right?
Yes, every day.
Do you see them blowing out of the back end of a garbage truck by accident?
Sometimes.
What about, have you ever seen people throw trash out in the environment?
I haven't seen them personally, but I know they do it because I see it when I walk down the street.
Not allowed. People that go boating, they sometimes drop trash. So I'm going to put some in our river here. And then I see a lot of trash in parking lots. And I'm seeing a lot of gloves right now and those disposable face masks.
Me too.
Because people get in their car and they don't want it in their car, so they just drop it on into the environment. So remember, the rainbow sprinkles are our litter. So all of our trash that we see on the sides of the road. So anybody think of another litter that isn't trash that could be in our environment? I'll hold up these sprinkles. They're brown. What do these kind of look like?
Fish bones and stuff.
Yeah, it's cool. You'll never eat chocolate sprinkles again. So we're gonna have our chocolate sprinkles here represent animal waste. Now, isn't animal waste good for the environment? It has nutrients in it. How could poop from cows and pigs and your dog that you walk, how can those things be bad for the environment?
Because it's like left everywhere.
Well, you definitely don't want to step in it, that's for sure. It's bad for my shoes.
But what did you say, hon?
You don't want to step in it.
Oh, yeah.
No.
You don't want to step in it and ruin my shoes.
I know. You know why you have to wash your hands after you use the toilet? Because it could have bacteria? Is that it?
Mm-hmm. Inside of your intestines, and every intestine of any creature is a bacteria called E. coli. And E. coli is the reason why a lot of grocery stores may pull like lettuce from the store shelves. Is because when it's in your body already, it's healthy. It helps your food digest, so there is good bacteria. But when it comes out and then you ingest it because it's been sprayed on some lettuce, that's when you can get sick and potentially go to the hospital. So you don't want to ingest anything that has E. coli bacteria on it. So that's why you sometimes see things get pulled from grocery store shelves. So that's why you want to pick up after your dog, is because you don't want to ruin my shoes and you don't want that bacteria entering into the waterway, because a lot of people in Palatka, they go fishing. And so if that bacteria gets into the food chain, like what you saw with the osprey carrying the fish, that could have been a human eating the fish. And then they could get bacteria poisoning, and maybe if it's bad enough, could go to the hospital because of it. So we want to make sure that waste stays out of our river. So another pollutant we have is actually, I'm going to use the green sprinkles to show it. And so where do you think the green sprinkles are going to go on my model here?
In the ocean, maybe? In the
I'm
lake?
going to tell you that it's going to blend in. So what else is green on my model?
The ground.
The grass. So what do you maybe put on your grass, especially around this time, to help it grow?
Fertilizer and stuff.
Fertilizer. Good. I'm going to add green sprinkles. So if you can't see it, it's fine. It's meant to blend in, to camouflage. So I'm going to add some green sprinkles to my green because I'm fertilizing the grass. So I have a big green field over here. If you guys fertilizer on your lawn, it's over in the houses. If the farm grows crops, they're going to want to fertilize those because fertilizer is just plant food. And you want them to grow nice and big, so you add the fertilizer. So that's my fertilizer. Now, why would fertilizer, if it's good on the land, but why would fertilizer be bad for the river?
Cause the fish will like eat it, and then they will like, it would be like poison them, so they'll die.
I heard like every other word.
The fish might eat it.
Okay,
And they
yeah,
die.
eat it. But is there only plants on land?
No.
No. Do plants grow in the water?
Yeah.
Yes, a manatee is an herbivore. They eat plants, so they eat the plants in the water. But what's a green thing that can grow on top of the water from extra nutrients like fertilizer being in the water?
Like grass.
Grasses, but those are rooted. What can grow on top of it? You guys just had a bloom in your area recently, and it was this green muck that just kind of sat on the top of the water. Do you guys know what that's called?
Algae. No.
Algae. That's right. Algae is a plant. Very good. And they grow when there's a lot of nutrients in the water. And if there's so much of it, like think like a buffet, there's going to be a lot of algae growing. And the problem with too much algae is it creates like a blanket on the top of the water. So then what can't get to the grasses underneath that blanket? What's high in the sky that plants need?
Sunlight?
The sunlight, yeah. So that blanket is going to block the sunlight. So then if the plant can't get sunlight, what's going to happen to the plants under the blanket?
They're gonna die.
They're going to die off. And what's going to happen to the manatees then if they have no food?
They're gonna starve.
They're going to starve, or they're going to have to move someplace else to find something else. So too much algae can be really bad for our river. And we do have a toxic kind in our river. And you can't look at it and know that it's toxic. So anytime you see green algae in our river, just stay away from it. Actually, take a picture of it. Actually, have your parents take a picture of it and report it to us. Send the picture to us so we can report it to the state. All right, my other pollution is actually going to come from my construction site. What do construction sites churn a lot of?
Dirt.
Dirt. Why would dirt be a pollution? Why do you think dirt would be bad for our river? Dirt's natural. Why would it be bad?
Because like maybe stuff will grow on top of it, or the fish will eat it and they might not like it, so they'll get poisoned.
Yeah, there could be stuff in the dirt. Remember that bacteria? It could be in the dirt. There could be other things in there that are bad for the animals. Have you guys ever walked through like a dust cloud?
Yeah.
What did you guys do when the dust kind of blew up in your face? What did you do first?
Started coughing.
I hold my nose. Because I don't want that dirt getting in my lungs, right? It hurts. The next thing I do is cover my eyes. I don't want it in
And
my
it
eyes.
happens like when you're doing fireworks. Like certain fireworks make smoke.
Mm-hmm.
So the dirt does the same thing on our water. It creates a dust cloud in the water and fish go swimming through it, and that dust can get stuck in their gills.
Oh.
Cause them breathing issues. Just like if you were to get dust in your nose, you would sneeze, you would blow your nose, you try to get it out, but fish have a hard time doing that. They just can't go and buy Kleenexes and blow their nose.
Oh,
So
I didn't
it's
know
stuck in
that.
their gills and cause them to suffocate.
Wow. Right now, we have a lot of construction, and there are little teeny tiny pieces of tar, like teeny, like sand almost. And it's all going down there. Probably not good either.
No, and there's chemicals in that stuff that's bad for the river. So if an animal were to eat that and then something were to eat that, now it's getting into the food chain. And if we were to eat that fish that has those little pellets in it, then we are eating that. And that's not good. It's the same thing with plastics. If an animal eats a piece of plastic and we eat that animal, we are then eating what it ate. So that's not really good.
Right.
So that is our watershed model for the St. Johns River. Does this look like a nice environment to visit?
Yeah.
Oh, we have trash, we have poop, we have, I mean, granted we have some really green lawns, but we may have a lot of green river too. And we have a lot of construction site with churned up dirt. But this stuff doesn't stay in one place. How can all of this stuff that's on land end up in our river and eventually out into our ocean?
Like stuff like pushes it.
Humans could
Like
just
what?
the river itself, sure. What else?
Or the wind gets it.
Yeah.
Wind can blow it into the water. Anything else?
Did you say rain?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and rain, like what we're going to experience this week. There's a lot of rain, at least forecasted for Jacksonville, that can push all that stuff into our river and eventually out into the ocean where the river empties out into. So what I have is my rain cloud. This is my water bottle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put water. It's Florida, so it's going to be an isolated shower. So I'm going to put some water on my model, and I want you guys to see how the water travels. Now, does water travel uphill or downhill?
Downhill.
Downhill. What's the force that pulls water downhill? It keeps us from floating around like astronauts, even though we all felt like astronauts yesterday.
Gravity.
Gravity, good job. So all that water is going to flow downhill. So the ocean is our lowest point. So we are going to have it rain on our watershed model here. Now we do have a storm drain. Miss Michelle mentioned a storm drain and showed it to you. And so I have a little pipe right here that's got some trash sprinkles in there. And it's coming out the other side. And she was right. Anything that goes down that drain goes into the river. So we want to make sure that, I call it a storm drain, because you only want things that come from a storm to go down there, which is just water. So it's just going to come right out there, but there's some trash that made it in there. We're going to let all this, it's raining. You can see it travel to the lowest point, which is the ocean. Traveling, it's raining on our business, on our roadways. Does that look like an ocean you guys want to go visit during the summer?
Nope.
No.
No, I don't want to go swimming in that ocean. That looks gross.
Ew.
So our river meets the ocean, and anything that gets into the river ends up in the ocean. Now, this is just my cork, which is stopping the water from draining right now. So, but there are some things that have stopped a lot of our pollution. So I'm going to pull up one, which is my trees. So what is, I have a Q-tip attached to the bottom of this tree. And this Q-tip is in the ground when it's in the model. So what is this Q-tip representing? If it's in the ground.
Roots.
Yes, roots.
It's roots, good. So my root system, do you guys see the green at the end of that root?
Yes.
Yeah, so what did this tree keep from getting into our river? What was that? What were the green sprinkles?
Pollution, litter and pollution.
Which pollution was the green one? Remember, it blended in with the grass?
Yes. Do you remember? I think it was the fertilizer.
Fertilizer. So fertilizer, this little bit of fertilizer was kept out of our river. Now, is this tree going to grow big and strong now? It's got plant food?
Yes.
Yeah, of course it is. So our tree roots kept some fertilizer from going into our river. This tree over here on the farm collected some brown. So what was the brown loose powder that I added on here?
Animal poop.
The loose brown, yeah. So the chocolate sprinkles were the brown. So there is actually a brown sprinkle on there. So it did
Mud.
take some of the brown from there, yeah. What was the other stuff that I added? It was dirt.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
Tree roots actually hold our dirt together and prevent something called erosion from happening, which is the washing away of a lot of dirt. So our tree roots hold our dirt in place. When you cut down those trees for, say, a building, then if there's a rainstorm, all that dirt can wash away because there's nothing holding it in place. So our trees act like anchors for our soil. So we want to make sure that they are taken care of. The other things that I mentioned were my oysters. Now remember, oysters and the wetlands are between the river and the ocean. So they are kind of like the last stop for all this stuff before it makes it onto the ocean. Our oysters, clams and scallops are also these things, and mussels. They are what's called filter feeders, which means they filter the water for us while they're feeding. So they clean our water for us. So we want to make sure that they're well protected. And then my last natural things were my sponges. And sponges do, remember, two things. They soak up extra water, which there's a few drops of water coming out of there. But it also stops a lot of the trash and pollution from making it into the ocean. So they're kind of like the last stop before the ocean. So we want to make sure that they're well taken care of too. We don't want to get rid of them because then it's a direct path to the ocean for all this trash. So those are a lot of the negative things that happen in our river and our watershed. But there's a lot of positive things. What are some things you guys can think of to help prevent our river from looking like this, or our watershed from looking like this? What are some good things that y'all can do?
Stop pollution.
Stop pollution, good. Make sure your trash goes in the proper receptacle and that it's in a bag or something that won't blow open. Just don't throw loose things in your trash can, because then they could blow out of the back of the garbage truck as they're working their way through. That's good. Anybody else have another idea?
Are V and Atlas still here? I know we could use not use fertilizer, or not overuse it.
Right. So it's called right plant, right place. And so we encourage people to use what's called Florida-friendly landscaping. So those are plants that don't need a lot of fertilizer. They are drought resistant, so that means you don't have to water them as much. So you want to make sure that your plants that you put in your yard don't need a lot of fertilizer, which is what Florida-friendly plants, they don't need much of it. So you don't want to put all that fertilizer on your lawn, and you won't have to if you have the right plant. But also, you don't want to fertilize at the wrong time. If you do fertilize your yard, you don't want to do it at the wrong time. Right before a rainstorm might not be the best time. You want to do it at a good time. And you don't want to put too much on your yard, because then the plants won't have time to really take it up. That's good.
What do you what do you do about the animal waste? Because if it's a farm, there could be a lot of waste.
There is, and that is one of our issues that we are trying to keep from happening to our river is what's called biosolids. And so it is waste, mostly from humans, because you got to do something with it, and it's treated and you actually put it on the farm. But we're seeing a lot of increased nutrients in our river right now. because of it. So that is a problem. The farmers are not, there's supposed to be protective measures for the nutrients that is released from that waste that are along the river banks. But of course that means that there needs to be oversight, which is hard because Florida has a lot of agriculture.
Was the, what was that white foam in the river? Do you think that came?
Oh, that's a great question. So my best guess on that is that it is actually the respiration, so the bacteria that is decomposing things in the river, like dead animals or animals that have died, or even the algae that we saw a few months ago. They could be decomposing or breaking down that matter, and they respire just like we do. They take in oxygen and they release carbon dioxide. And so a lot of the time you'll see these big mats of the foam, and that is the carbon dioxide that the bacteria is breathing out as they are working in overdrive to break down the dead material in our river.
Wow. I'm so glad I know that now. I always thought it was.
Well, that's one option of what it could be. It's not, you know, there needs to be tests to see what it's made up of, but that's my best guess since you guys have been reporting algae in your area lately.
Thanks.
Were there any other questions or comments that you guys had as we were doing this that I could potentially answer?
I have a question. Is it true that sharks can come up the river? Do they?
That is a tricky question because of Shark Week. There's always the 10 most dangerous sharks, and bull sharks is always number one because they are known to come into freshwater systems. And so the furthest south I have heard of a report of a shark being caught is the naval base up here in Jacksonville. So sharks have been found in the river. Now you're not going to find a great white. And actually the estuaries off of just right at our coastline are great nursing grounds for sharks. So you can catch things like black tip sharks and bonnet heads, which look like hammerheads. So you can find a good amount of sharks near the end of our river because that's where it's really salty. If you find them closer into the brackish water down here in Jacksonville, further away from the ocean, they're either lost, they're following their prey, or they're the kind that can handle both fresh and salt water. But you won't find them as far south as Palatka area. They really don't leave Jacksonville. But that is a very few and far between situation. So don't be afraid about going in the water. The sharks, they're mostly off of our coast or right near the end of our river.
Does anyone else have any questions for Miss Emily? Well, okay. I would like to thank Miss Emily for sharing everything that she knows about the river. Can we all thank her? Thank you, Miss Emily.
Well, thanks for having me, y'all. It was great to see everybody and during the crazy times, and to be able to be back teaching, because honestly my teaching ability has been put on pause because of all of this. So it's been nice to be able to be back in the classroom and teaching.
Thank you so much. And before you go, everyone who's here, we're doing virtual reading this summer. We're doing Read Squared. So when you read or do missions, you can get earn points and get prizes. So if you like to read over the summer and you want to take part, go to the website and look for Read Squared, and everyone in your family can do it. Okay? And thank you so much for coming. It was nice to meet everybody. Have a good day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you,
Miss Emily. Thank you, Miss Michelle. Have a great day.